Well, good morning to you once again. Thank you so much for being with us. It's midweek morning at NTV. I am Priscilla Regina Naboga. Now, as of last night, we get to have reactions to the president's speech following the talks on the attack on clergyman Bujingo. And yesterday, the president addressed the nation on security and rendering a word to foreign powers on their stand as far as Uganda's affairs are concerned. Now, we critique the president's first address to this nation with my guests on my immediate left. I do have Joseph Ocheno. Happy New Year and welcome to the program for this year.
Happy New Year to you, Priscilla. Fantastic seeing you. Fantastic that we're here starting the year. But of course, on matters of Mr. Museveni's assurances to us.
Okay. We also are joined by Ms. Jacqueline Nakaiza, who's a political analyst, to give us a 2 cents, and we're pleased to have a balanced debate for that matter. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, and I'm happy to be here and part of the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, we do have... I'm looking for the word in my head. Oh Lord!
My names. one was for baptism.
Exactly. It was like our elder in statesmanship.
Thank you very much. We wish all our viewers a very happy New Year, and you for having invited us here. Thank you very much. A lot of things have gone under the bridge. We want to see what comes out in this year. Uganda will be there, whether we like it or not, and we have to find solutions to all our conflicts and problems.
Okay.
I think this year, I see we've learned quite a bit. I hope we will learn a little bit more this year again. Thank you.
Okay, as the saying goes, you learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so we start with the learning part, and I would like to ask each one of you, starting with you, Joseph, what did you learn from the presidential address as of last evening? What were your highlights?
I unfortunately got the highlights thanks to the 24 Media Network. I was traveling from Nagongera to Kampala specifically for this program. I must say that I was extremely disappointed that the first presidential address, as it were, no obligation except for State of the Nation address, he did not need to do it. He could have given us a New Year message, which of course he did. Was it New Year or end of year?
End of year.
I would have expected him to have given us a broader speech on the state of the nation, not as a State of the Nation address, but giving us hope. And to do so, because he failed to do that over the end of year speech, he should really have told us how bad last year was and how good this year is going to be, and so therefore gone ahead and included security guarantees for our people. As for someone who came from Nagongera and had to take 45 minutes from Nagongera to Tororo, a journey that should take 10 minutes, in a terrible road that people have been imprisoned for asking for it, and to have a major presidential address and to come here and find billions of ghost workers as a headline for a publication tells me that there's a huge amount of misdirection of resources, including a presidential resource. So to me that was the thing. But most importantly, as it happens, Mr. Museveni seems to forget that he subjected this country to a very atrocious war. And while we want to see ADF off, and while it's been 38 years, it was rather cheeky of him to have listed the question of child soldiers by ADF, which is repugnant. Of course, I am a scholar, a writer, and have done this campaign hugely, saying that children should not have been used. We know children who are used in Luweero, children who are used as weapons of war by NRA. So I think that was a weaker one for him. He should have talked about ADF in any other way except to refer to the child soldiers used by ADF, because in any case, we would say LRA learned it from Museveni, ADF learned it from Museveni. But that's said because the new year, and Captain Babu is giving us a hope for a new year, that generally as a nation, we need to quickly find a new possibility early part of this year to say, how do we work together as a nation? So how do we work with Mr. Museveni to ensure that we seek to resolve our conflicts amicably, and we seek to create a situation in which people don't have to throw bombs like Museveni and the ADFs did do, but to resolve our conflicts around these tables. The possibility of that would be that creating enabling political space in which people don't have to go to the streets to throw stones, and people don't have to go and get in prison before merely Inagonga Road is done. And if I may say so, a close relative of mine in Inagonga, somebody who worked for Uganda Commercial Bank, or rather, Uganda Commercial Bank, somebody who worked for the African Textile Mill, now in his 70s, the other day was found for dead in a house in Inagonga. He was dragged into a local health facility, and there was not an iota of a drug. Those are the priorities I'd like Mr. Msei to talk about. Had it not been, ironically, a private health facility next door, this guy had been pronounced dead. And as I said, ironically, the private health facility brought him back to consciousness within about an hour. What an irony. Those are the priorities I would like to see Mr. Museveni do. And as far as the people from Nagonga and the people from Toro and the people, particularly of my Bukele sub-region, which is the poorest declared last year, this address has absolutely nothing to refer to them and grant them hope. But anyway, as a national security, it's an important one.
Okay, all right. Jacqueline, what do you get to learn from the president's speech last evening, and did he communicate to the nation?
In terms of security, I really missed out the president talking about how to deal with the issue of recruitment into the ADF, because his major emphasis was that the government is going to wipe out the ADF and they are going to annihilate them, they are going to pursue them until DRC. But me, personally, I would have wanted the president addressing the issue of how to deal with the ADF decisively and sustainably, specifically looking at how do you curtail recruitment into the ADF, how do you stop, how do you address those factors that lead these children to be recruited into the ADF. We see there is a lot of recruitment going around, I think along Busoga, Bujiri, and that stretch, that is where most of these children are taken from, and they're taken to ADF. But how do you deal with that? How do you stop parents from sending their children to ADF? And how do you really, because it's the duty of the state, how do you protect these citizens? These are very young girls who are coming out to speak, and I mean, as I have children, and I'm looking at my 7-year-old, and she's being conscripted into ADF. I mean, that is the failure of the state to handle its responsibilities, protecting its citizens and children. So I think it is very important that much as the president says, yes, we are willing to pursue them from as far as DRC, but then how do you address the causes? How do you address and how do you curtail recruitment? I think I would have loved the president to speak more to that, and then after that he would also have spoken to how do you demobilize them and how do you reintegrate them into society? Because these are Ugandans, Are you going to just kill them mercilessly like that? First of all, you have to understand why they are fighting, and maybe he has an idea as to why they are doing that. But then how do you demobilize them? Killing them isn't a solution. You're going to kill them, but then they are going to leave babies and grandchildren in terms of those that are going to further the conflict. So I really missed out that.
Okay. Yeah. Conflict resolution does appear yet again also from Jacqueline. Captain, in your regard, and as a senior citizen of this country who have seen a change of guard quite often, you looked at the New Vision this morning, ADF abductees narrate ordeal, and you called it Miss ADF.
Let us become a little bit more serious. We are talking about terrorism. Terrorism is something which is a little bit more complicated than ordinary war. We are talking about something that is really starting from Palestine and the Israelis. Most of these problems have started in the Middle East, and therefore some people have taken up something called religion and hidden behind it. It is not religion. It is individuals who are fighting the American interference in the Middle East. And therefore these little groups that have come up, starting with Al-Qaeda, going on to the Islamic State, and so on and so forth. And these are being financed by very powerful people. A lot of these people have now got their roots into Africa. We've got Al-Shabaab, we've got another group in Mozambique, we've had a group in West Africa, which is very well known. We have one here called ADF. These are all connected. And therefore a government getting concerned about security becomes, to me, a priority, because the security affects all the other things that we're talking about. Now, we have to be very careful. This is not the ordinary war. You are dealing with a very complicated group of people. Unfortunately, they are not all Ugandans who are there. If you heard those young ladies speak, some of them are from Burundi, others from Tanzania, others are from Congo, and one was from Uganda. Now, the whole problem is these people, when they are fighting, there are two different things. You could be fighting in an area, and because of the war, you get to pick up a lot of children. Or you can go and recruit them using this very powerful opium, which the people have turned into religion, which is not true. Now, you heard yesterday the young ladies talk about sections of certain sheikhs and so on and so forth, who control certain areas.
And for our audience, because they were using a dialect that may not be so familiar to our audience.
They were using Swahili, which was, of course, the Congolese Swahili is different from the Burundi Swahili and from the Tanzanian Swahili. So, but they came out very clear. Now, one point was made yesterday, is that actually ADF exists, because I've been hearing some of our experts here. Oh, there's no ADF. This is a lie. But the president went through the history of ADF, starting from Kichwamba and so on and so forth, and when they crossed over during Mobutu's time and so forth. He gave us the historical background. And he told you it's not a very easy group. Of course, he's talking about, as an army man, they normally talk in a certain way. The crushing and so on and so forth. That becomes part of their lingua franca, if you like. But the whole problem that I see is he put security yesterday as number one, because that security is affecting a lot of other areas, including our economy. And therefore, he has to be very careful how he brings it out. First of all, he has to convince you that ADF exists, because you're spending money from ADF. And then he shows you, Madame said she didn't get back. It was in the local language, how they were recruited, and how they used their husband. For example, the husband of the first lady was from actually Tanzania, ended up having a Burundian wife, and eventually taking them in the army. The other ladies, the three of them, were from Congo, around the Kivu area, and they were taken again by those people that way, using husbands and so on. So they recruit the women, and they recruit young people, using the religious groups, for example, madrasas and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, I'm not happy with that bit, because they deceive a lot of our people, and our people believe that this is a war of religion, and so it's not. We've had wars of religions in this country, right from the days when the white people came here, the Arabs were here, or we had wars here, Catholics, Protestants, Anglican. In fact, to make it even worse, at one time, the Catholic Church had two different groups. One was in Zambia, the other one was Rubaga, and so on and so forth. These are religious groups we've had in this country. And therefore, in my sincere opinion, I think it was a good, in my opinion, he picked the good topics, because those are interrelated with other topics. All right? And then when he went to talk about the foreigners, really the foreigners should stop bullying us. A lot of foreigners are bullying us using methods which are totally wrong. To come here and tell us that we should change our culture to theirs is wrong. I know some of us like to be white people, but we are not. We are Africans. And by the way, for them, once you have an iota of blood, of black, you're not white. Even if you've got blue eyes and whatever it is, you're still a black person. To them, it's a feeling. And if they don't want you, they don't want you. You can see what they've done to this lady of Harvard. The poor girl has been tormented by Jews. Yeah? And they're tormented for nothing. Simply because she said a context of a war. You have to define whatever it is they asked her in a context. Now, then you get some very, very unfortunate things happening. You look at the Middle East war. In fact, you people should look at the Middle East war a little bit more seriously, because they have broken every international law, no matter which side you look at it. The Palestine has been destroyed, and all they want is to steal their land. And you're talking about human rights? These are the people who stand up on a pedestal and say, oh, there are human rights in Africa because we're talking about homosexual? Really? The World Bank? One of the conditions is homosexual? What is this nonsense? Yeah? Now, time has come, really. I think the speech was good, because it is different from the other speeches that you people want, which come during budget time, which come during the State of the Nation. This was what he thought was a good speech for the people of Uganda. But one point came clear: the ADF is there, They brought some witnesses. He told you how much money is being spent. And towards the end, he put out his hands. I said, time has come for you to get out of the bush. To me, that was very important. Now, with all this talk, crashing and what, he eventually said, listen, ADF, time has come. It's time you got out. What are you fighting for? And he said, now you can come out and we can find ways and means of accommodating you. In my opinion, that was, to me, that was the climax. You might not have got that message well, but I did get that message well. Now, madam, if you want this year that we talk about corruption, and we talk about mismanagement of the state, and we talk about our local conflict, we can have that space so that we can talk about them and find out where the problems are. But these two problems are extremely important, especially the bullying by the West, which has not started today. They've been bullying every African government. Right? And the man I admire among all these was a man called Nyerere. How he managed with all that bullying they did. They destroyed him economically, but he united the country. To me, this year, and I pray and hope that we can unite this country, starting with the president. He has now to sit down and say, what is wrong? Is it me? Is it the country? Or is it the people?
Okay. Speaking of the bullying, Joseph, in regards to the anti-homosexuality law that was signed into authority last year, so you've had different international bodies, both supporting us financially and otherwise, coming out to react and respond towards the negative, especially focusing on the clause that brings out the death penalty for those that are found on the wrong side of the law. Some scholars are of the point of view that you can go around that particular element of the law. Perhaps consider revising the wording in there, or alternatively you can suspend that part of the law for a certain period of time so as to calm down the fires that are coming through from foreign influence. What is your take on that?
No, my worry is that after 38 years, Mr. Museveni decides to subject us to some kind of prison, political prison. Now, having made a major error of judgment on the question of the anti-homosexuality legislation, the manner in which he handled it, is now a topic akin to ADF. But I'll deal with it quickly before going back to ADF. No, we did not need this legislation. There is sufficient legal provisions, statutory provisions to deal with matters of matters that would concern Ugandans about homosexuality or any other vices that would relate to this. Number one. Number two, I've told this very particular program that the last person to present and push for anti-homosexual legislation would be Museveni and his NRA regime. Because I've said it on record, NRA men repped actually men. And those actually men were not homosexuals, were they? They were not. It's on record. Now, if NRA men repped actually men 20, 25 years ago, you know, what really was it 1 year ago, 2 years ago, that needed this legislation? Number two, it's on record again that as it happens, the American president had a conversation with Mr. Museveni, and Mr. Museveni, for whatever reason, maybe he wanted to play politics with us, decided to take the route that he did. And so this is where we are. So we are paying a price for Mr. Museveni's intransigence or his strategic error in trying to politicize homosexuality and present himself as the Mr. Clean and Mr. Rescuer about homosexuality. You know, so that hasn't worked. We just need, you're right, to find a way in which we're able to remoderate ourselves. And then number two, on the question of the death penalty, a future UPC government in which I'll be involved will make sure that we knock off death penalty from the statute books. It's a crude, it's archaic. You know, now, if we are going to kill people who have been involved in a very unusual sexual act in their bedrooms, what about, as I said, these other people whom we know did these things openly? And as I said, rape in one way or another. But rape using a sexual act of somebody else, that does not apply in this. So it's neither here nor there. But then brings us back to this. So the question of bullying. So no leader in this region, historically since independence, has been much more of a friend, yes man, or what he calls it, nyampala, to Anglo-Americans and World Bank than Mr. Museveni. So we cannot pick and choose. And then number 3, I was telling you about Nagongera Road, I was telling you about health facilities in Toro, including Nagongera. It's Mr. Museveni who sold public assets that we, UPC, built, and this country built for the citizens of this country, predominantly on the instructions of Anglo-America. So what was it 30 years ago, and it's not right today? That said,
perhaps he's righting his wrongs, right?
So if he's righting his wrongs, he should come out and apologize. And that's politics. And Captain Babu says this man is a soldier. Yes, the fact that you're a soldier does not mean you should not use soldierly language for us when allegedly you're a president. You know, you should be a statesman. So we expect him as a fatherly person to guide the citizens of this country, say, look, fellow citizens, I got this wrong. Fellow citizens, we got this wrong. Fellow citizens, this is the reality in which we are. Fellow citizens, we are entrapped into this. We need to be able to find a way going forward. And I think Dr. Badri is also quite right that actually it's from him that we need to be able to get a sense of guidance to say that, look, as a country, we've had enough of many of these things. We need to begin to find a way in which we're able to go through a peaceful processes. But on the ADF, which is primarily the issue, it's incumbent upon elderly men and women, particularly elderly men like myself, who subject this country to huge amount of terror, to be able to think, and we pay these guys huge amount of money to think on our behalf. It's a commonsensical thing that what attracts children to this kind of terror. Mm-hmm. You say invest in education. You need to invest in holistic education, you know, and create an enabling environment in which children do not go what they call in English trances. Children don't miss schools. You know, you invest in security services, and we've been talking to police officers on this, that we need to put a lot much more money to equip the police services. Not Museveni's protection thing, what is it, SAFC, whatever, you know, the military. We need to equip security police in this country. We need to make sure that we invest in education. We need to make sure that we invest in health. We need to be able to create an enabling environment so that our youngsters have got jobs. Those who go to universities have got jobs. I've got, including this morning as I was waiting in the green room, someone sent me a CV, and they've been since they graduated 5 years ago, they don't have a job to do. That's a graduate. A-level, they don't have a job to do. O-level, I met 3 at my home yesterday in Nagongera. They don't have a job to do. What about those in primary school for whom they have no hope? Mm-hmm. They look for alternatives, and that is what opportunistic organizations do appeal to them and recruit them. It has actually been the case that in many of these cases where these young people are recruited into terror, including outside Uganda without prejudice, in many cases, people go there because they don't have alternative means to survive and to live. But critically on ADF, Mr. Museveni cannot give speeches about peaceful negotiations in Sudan, peaceful negotiations in South Sudan, peaceful negotiations in Congo, without actually having a possibility of saying that this year let's talk politics. Priscilla, I happen to have been one of the leading people who pushed Museveni's friends in the West, on the record, pushed Museveni's friends, I don't want to pick these things for political things, pushed Museveni's friends in the West, particularly at the time post 9/11, which was very risky. One time I was going to American embassy, I thought I would be whisked off to Guantanamo Bay, pushing them to push Mr. Museveni to talk to Kon. You know? So if we talked to Kon, and I remember an American diplomat asking Joseph, who are these people, whom do you talk to, what do you talk about? And I said, well, that's the reason we need to be able to know why they're fighting, and we need to know in terms of who they are. You guys go to more intelligence than we do. Mm-hmm. So we need to know what are generally the grievances of ADF in Uganda. Why is ADF in Uganda? Why is ADF not in Kenya? But Captain Babu is right, that in terms of context of terror, it's predominantly Middle Eastern thing, and in context of particularly this on the ADF things, is also substantially related that some of these things will be religious. But let's have that conversation.
All right. Captain will be responding to why not Kenya, why not Tanzania, why are they interested, what's the ADF's potential interest in Uganda. But before you do, Jacqueline, Joseph here mentioned something very interesting and asked the question, what is attracting a young population to such militia groups? If we look at the markup of our population, 60% plus of it is young people. And so you get to look at, that's about 25 million Ugandans that are below the age of 18 capable of joining the ADF. So that would be 25 million ADF rebels if they were all to be recruited. And then we have another issue already on ground that also then speaks into why they're being attracted to the ADF, and that is child labor. In Uganda, you do have about 6 million children engaged in child labor directly, trying to fend for themselves either, or fend for their families, or that's how circumstances have tossed them life at an early age. So in light of that, how and what is exactly the attraction to such militia groups in a young person's perspective?
Well, one, a young person is a young person. They cannot make sound decisions for themselves. But when you're hard pressed, there are times when there are issues of survival. You need food. You know, you're not educated, and you're a young person, you're not in school, you're at home, your parents cannot be able to provide for you. I've seen parents who are sending off young children as early as 8 to go and work somewhere as child laborers. Now when they go to work, wherever they go, they are mistreated, and as you're being mistreated, you end up in the streets, or you end up in very clumsy circumstances where you can easily be indoctrinated into anything, into whatever someone wants to do it. Like it's this also these children who end up on streets as prostitutes. You wonder, why should a young girl end up on the streets as a prostitute, you know? But it's a question of survival. And this question of survival is has been created by the government that has failed to provide economic opportunities, but also other social services like education, like social welfare. I mean, there should be ways to cater to children who are on the streets, children whose parents cannot be able to afford to provide for them, health facilities, education, and those other social basics that make a human being comfortable to stay in, to be as a person who is living. So if the government doesn't speak to those particular issues of providing social services and facilities and other opportunities for the youth, for the children, then it's very, very easy for them to be indoctrinated, because one, they are desperate. You know, you don't have an income, you don't have money, and you really need to survive as a human being. So if this comes as an opportunity, I mean, I don't know how much the ADF are paid, people who are fighting there in the ADF are paid, but there are places where these people are paid as much as $500. So if someone is giving you $500 on a monthly basis, you know, and then here you are, you don't even have a meal for that day, how easy is it for you to go and be conscripted into these rebel activities? Yeah, so I think the government should speak to those particular issues, provide social services, and assure the population of a livelihood, a sustainable and meaning livelihood. Otherwise, the youth will keep on, be it not ADF or any other thing else, they'll keep on being conscripted into such things that are a threat to the security.
Jacqueline reminds me of a time I was younger, and there's this person who came, asked their friend to collect a group of young people, and so when we got to meet the said person, he divided us into boys and girls, different rooms, and then interestingly, in the room of boys, he told them to go back home, and then he stayed with only the girls. And you know, he presented a good opportunity, as she said. It was just too juicy for a young person like myself to say no to. And so we jumped into the bandwagon. I think today I would be a missing person if it wasn't for being listening to my intuition a little bit further. I would be a missing person. So I do agree with you that it's very lucrative to focus on the young person, because they're willing to go with the wind, but also survival for the fittest. How do I get to survive with that? And so, Captain, this gives us the opportunity as a government. You said that security is priority. Perhaps it's not the actual priority we should be focusing on in 2024. Perhaps we can realign that priority to focus on our bigger population percentage of the young people that are being attracted into such groups and ending up misguided, and then we end up dealing with what you're calling the priority issue, insecurity.
Thank you very much. Let me start with homosexual. When you make a law in Parliament, there's supposed to be something called a nuisance, something happening. It is from that nuisance that you get the law done. Old laws can be reformed. They can be reviewed. This business saying we have got laws, Laws to do what? So the first thing you do, the person who introduced that bill in Parliament was not Museveni. It was a member of an opposition who brought it in Parliament. Okay? It belongs to a party. When you bring a private member's bill, you are supposed to support it, that it is important that they pass that bill. And the reasons which were given was a new movement called LGBTQ, which is started in America and in Britain.
Plus,
yeah, plus at the end. That group goes to recruit small kids and take them like what they did to you. Take them in place and start giving them all sorts of things. Now, I want you to imagine your young kid being raped by a grown-up and given 500,000 shillings. A young kid, a boy, or a girl and a girl, whatever it is that they do. Now, the whole argument, there must have been a reason for this gentleman to bring that law. And government accepted, and it was debated. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody goes and rapes a little kid, your own son, and you think he's a great man, in some countries when you rape little kids, both girls and boys, they actually castrate you. Now, you're talking about the death penalty. Mm-hmm. Let's look at the dirty side of it. Why do you take our children into this area? Call it rainbow, whatever it is. Yeah? So, the person who brought this, Parliament brought it, they passed the law, and the president had two things. He could either refuse it and go on a loggerhead with Parliament, or Parliament will call him out because they could refuse to look at his other laws. So that argument, I think we better be very careful. There's usually a nuisance before a law is accepted. And that death penalty, where does it come in? Now my friend says that some people were raped sometimes. In prison they rape them every day. Mm-hmm. Everywhere they do it. The question is, how do we fight that vice? In war, there were people here told me they would find a pregnant woman, and the two soldiers would argue, said, what do you think that kid is? Is it a boy or a girl? And they would cut the woman's stomach. It happened in this country. Now, we need to be very careful. Was this law unfair? And therefore you don't want a death penalty because of this. We're not talking about an orientation. We're talking about small kids who could be destroyed. Mm. So that's the law. Let us not keep on saying Mr. Museveni. By the way, Mr. Museveni is His Excellency, not Mr. Museveni. He is the president of this country. And let me tell you something else. Let me tell you something else. No, when you're talking, I kept quiet. I kept quiet when you were talking. Please, let's respect each other. Let me tell you a very quick synopsis. There was a young lady like yourself who was a professor. Went in a classroom. And this young lady, one of the students, says, are you the assistant of the professor? I said, no, I am the professor. So some boys made a crack joke because she was a pretty woman and so on and so forth. And then this lady turned to the young man and said, what's your name? He said, I am John. He said, oh, John. He said, can you define power? John started looking and said, let me tell you what power is. I can destroy you as a student and you never have to finish this course. I can get you fired out of this university. That is power. No matter what you say here, no matter what you call him, no matter what spins you use to insult the president, he is the president and is the first man on the fountain of honor. And therefore we should respect him. If he has done something wrong, you tell him what you have done I don't agree with. But to keep him, drawing him in the mud is wrong. So I want us to say this, and I'll keep on saying this. There's a lot of things I don't agree with the president, by the way. Some of the things that they have done in this government. I'll talk about them, but I will not draw him in the mud. So another point that I wanted to make, you talked about ADF. Madam, ADF in Uganda, Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Kenya, and they bombed the embassies in Kenya and in Dar es Salaam, and now they are in Mozambique. Let us not deceive ourselves. This is a movement of Islamic nations, they call themselves, which is not true, it's not Islamic. and they are all over the world, and they don't not only here. They are also in Sudan, in different places. They are in West Africa. These things you are hearing, those West African government being changed by, there are resistance in those places, again by the same group of people. So when you sit here and naive, you think, oh, Uganda is the only one talking about ADF. We're talking about Africa here. And let me give you another point here. The Europeans and the Minister of Economic Affairs of Paris said something very nice. Macron, you're opening the eyes of these Africans. And when you open their eyes, our children will not get a livelihood. Mm. So, Macron, you should resign because you have opened the eyes of the Africans. The same people want to destabilize Africa to continue exploiting it. And some of those groups, by the way, are being financed by those people internationally. Let's get to one point very clear. Have you seen photographs showing you how they land in Congo in forests with an aeroplane to take minerals? Did you see United Nations the other day with minerals in their vehicles? It had an accident and big chunks of gold came out of their vehicles. Who are they working for? So, if we don't look at Africa being destabilized, madam, and we keep on thinking that it is individuals in Uganda or wherever it is, and then if you want to survive, you have to try and find a way how to work with these people. Especially when you know how weak you are. Mm-hmm. First of all, we are vulnerable economically. Thirdly, they have managed to control us economically. Okay, they snap their fingers wherever they want us to do whatever it is. So you've got to wake up. Whilst there are mistakes here, by the way, I'm not saying there are no mistakes, madam. Please, let's get this point clear. We have mismanaged our economy. We have mismanaged our group. We have a heavy administrative cost. We've got people who are corrupt. All those I accept. And we have a system of government where we have a central government, decentralized government, which I think has been over-decentralized. So, at the end of the day, I want to say this. ADF is a very unfortunate guerrilla warfare which is being financed by some people who believe in that system. And if Al-Shabaab by the way means youth. Okay? Boko Haram means virtually the same thing. Yeah, and the one in Mozambique the other day had the same problem. Mm-hmm. So we need to sit down and forget about this hoping, utopian thinking that country can be. No. What is happening on the ground? What are the problems? How can we solve them? So to me, whilst I agree, there's a lot of mistakes in this country. And we need to point them out. And we need to point out, we should not debase ourselves. We should try and find out. The other day I was in a program and the guy said, when you put water in a pot, in sewer, after 3 days the water becomes bad. But I didn't have time to answer him. I would have told him, when you put mamusi in a boat and you put, what do they call that, omwemba on top and put it in the ground, the longer it stays there, the better it becomes a much better drink. So if you are talking about wine, the oldest wine is the best. So at the end of the day, what are we talking about? So these arguments, we can go on with these arguments forever. The best cognac, $1,000, is 30 years old. 50 years old, 100 years old. So you find the bottle is going for so much money. So at the end of the, if you want to use these examples, we can. All I am saying, okay, President Museveni has been there for 40 years. Mr. President, when are you leaving? Just ask him that. Don't go into...
Well, he said he committed to leaving in 2007. He's still here.
Yeah, we keep on telling him that, and I hear people keep telling him that. So the other day he asked me a question, can you tell Museveni to get up? I said, why should I tell him? Ask him.
Okay. Jacqueline, Captain here has given us a strong, defense and says it's ADF in Uganda, it's a whole other group in Kenya, it's another group in West Africa, and so these are things that are common to the African continent.
I want to give you an information.
And the Middle East.
The Islamic nation which was started in the Middle East was started by the United States. Exactly. This group called Hamas was started by United States. I want you people to be very careful.
Which United States is now
America.
That's not our
Obama to fight Syria.
So Jacqueline, Captain did say that one of the issues that we need to pay attention to is that as a government, through the president saying that they should come out of the bush and perhaps sit on a round table and negotiate or whatever it is that they need to address to be able to manage this ADF group. One of the reasons Captain says is the fact that we have to consider we are a weakened economy, something that the president put out yesterday, that it's definitely digging into the coffers of the nation, and we need to build and develop this economy. But at what expense is it going to be for us with the ADF? So in regards to that, what's your perspective?
Well, my PhD personally is in terrorism studies. I analyze the terrorism insurgency in Somalia, and I think I have a slight understanding of how terrorism works and how it generally operates. And I'll say one thing, that wherever there is an insurgency like the ADF, like the Al-Shabaab in Somalia, in Madagascar, there is always a reason as to why they are fighting. Even when you're saying, no, those are radical Islamists, they have a point, they have a reason, and it is incumbent upon us, or incumbent upon right-thinking beings to say that, no, let us listen to them and understand why they are fighting. Don't just rub them off and say, no, they don't have a reason, they are just what? Radical Islamists. So I think it is very important for us to understand, why are the ADF fighting? What are they fighting for? And almost wherever people are fighting from, there are resources they are fighting for. DRC is very, very rich with minerals. Recently I saw a clip when President Kagame was complaining. Actually, he wasn't complaining. He was just commenting that they are blaming him for the insurgency in Congo, and he's like, after blaming me, they say that we are taking minerals out, but it's not us who are taking minerals out. The minerals go through Rwanda, they're just going through Rwanda, and it is the whites who are shipping the minerals out of what? They go to Congo, they steal the minerals, and they come through Rwanda, and then they go beyond Brussels, and wherever they go, Brussels, China, and all those other countries, So you have to understand what is causing all this foreign influence in Congo, in the ADF, because the ADF is very well funded, Otherwise, where would they be getting the arms from? They have the equipment to fight, So they are very well funded by the foreigners. But what is the interest of the foreigners? They are picking minerals, So much as, and they are picking minerals, but they are doing it under Islam, saying that we are supporting Islamists, so we are fighting Islamist fundamentalists, So everywhere you see a conflict, be it a terrorism insurgency or any other conflict, there are always reasons as why they are fighting. But
so from your analysis, what would you speculate to be the reason in this case to Uganda?
Well, ADF may say that we want to see a change of power, but I don't think that is the case. No, I don't think that is the case. They are trying to kind of establish a niche in Western Uganda and Eastern DRC. Yeah, that is what I'm thinking. That is what I'm thinking, because I mean, from what they are doing, they don't show that concerted effort to pursue the change of power in Kampala. No. They are stuck there in Western Uganda. And from what I think, their numbers are very still insignificant, about 500. I mean, I think 500, of course, it is a significant number, but also at the same time insignificant to cause serious change.
Okay, all right, but it's causing serious pain to the economy, especially through Western Uganda. In light of the fact that we are also trying to improve on our relations with the DRC, especially trade-wise, that's going to become an issue for us in 2024 through economic development.
Well, DRC is a huge problem, not only in the Great Lakes, because usually it is very hard for an insurgence to happen in a place where the government is present. So there is serious lack of government presence in that part of Eastern DRC. And DRC is a very big country, But also that part is a forest, It is a forest. So it is very hard. The government in DRC itself has serious issues it is dealing with, to the point that it cannot be able to govern the whole country sustainably. And when you can't govern your country sustainably, there are going to come other pockets or other ways of governance, and among these are the rebels and the insurgent groups. So insurgent groups can easily operate in DRC because the government is not present in some of those places. That is why you have the Interahamwe, that is why you have the Rwandese, and that is why you have so many other insurgent groups in DRC. So there is that problem that DRC has to play a part in trying to govern the country, and then Uganda also. When you work with DRC and then you also work with Uganda, then you can put enough pressure on the ADF and push them out or force them to come out of. But when they can operate freely in DRC, it is very hard. It becomes hard to wipe them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the president is calling them out to negotiate with them. What are some of the negotiation tools or mediation tools that you would recommend be used for such a group? You call them small but insignificant.
One thing about negotiations is that you cannot negotiate with a group that feels strong enough. You cannot negotiate that with a group that is economically strong, militarily strong. ADF hasn't, I don't think ADF has reached that point of saying that no, we can come out. You know, you have to have significantly weakened them militarily and economically. But the ADF can still, even when we had thought that with the capturing of Jamil Mukulu, the group would be weakened. But no, these insurgent groups know how to, they have mastered that art of rising and falling and rising. So with the exit of Jamil Mukulu, we see Musa Baluku coming in, and still they have leadership. Their leadership is still strong, and there is someone to give them strategic direction. So if you're going to talk about negotiations, then you maybe begin talking with clandestinely. You begin talking with the ADF leadership, you know, and give them that, you show them that maybe they can meaningfully participate in the country, participate in the governance of Uganda. But is the president willing to govern the country with former insurgents? Did he do it with Konyi? Maybe no, maybe no. And from some of those precedents, you don't entice this group to come out of what? Of fighting and negotiate on the table. But if you're going to negotiate, they have to be weakened militarily. Their leadership has to be very weak, and economically they have to be weak. But from what I know currently, the ADF is still, much as they don't have significant numbers, but whatever they have, they're still strong. They are still strong.
All right.
Yeah.
Joseph, not wanting your history to repeat itself through what we saw 20 years of Konyi's influence. In northern Uganda, we don't want that to be the case for western Uganda at such a time as this, when we're supposed to be rebuilding our momentum economically, especially post-COVID-19. What are the lessons that we picked out of Konyi that can be placed on table and particularly reviewed now, sooner than later?
I have relative scholarly experience too on issues of conflict, and my slight division with Jackie is that it's really the level of parties to contest is not necessarily that they must be at par. So you can talk to anybody, starting from the weakest to the topmost. And then away from Konyi, Museveni talked to Moses Ali. Moses Ali is sleeping in cabinet at our expenses, simply because they had a deal with Mr. Museveni. So the precedent has been set. Was it necessarily the case that Ali had a capacity then to march into Kampala? Possible, unlikely. And so I think that for me, linking to the Ali thing, as a concerned citizens, we just want peace, harmony, and stability. And for me, as a political leader, my point is I expect the people who are governing on my behalf to use their skills and expertise and capacities to be able to create peace and stability. So in this case, though, that for the ADF talking, I don't think that necessarily the issue would be saying that, well, you can talk and resolve. I would like to be able to see a situation in which there is an element of an olive branch put on the table. But while that may be enticing these guys, you would say you enticed Museveni, you enticed Konyi, and now you're enticing ADF. I'll just go back to what I would do. For me, I would focus on mitigating circumstances under which younger people get induced into these things. I can tell you that I know politically that in the event that we're actually providing essential services to the citizenry, in the sense that we're actually being effective in trying to provide for educational services, in the sense that actually the majority of Ugandans feel a sense of belonging, a sense of ownership, that the judicial system is in their place, the security services are in their places, the government is governing on their behalf, we'll be making more and more harder a situation in which these people are able to rise. But if I can say something very quickly, we may come here as a politician, but also as a political leader and also as a commentator. Nuances about how we make presentations here, neither here. The matter of public opinion. I want to say that, I need to say this, that Mr. Museveni is Mr. Museveni. If I was to write to him or write as His Excellency, one of the things I excelled in at school was English as a language, not English as a spoken language. Okay. So no, that's the thing, because Ugandans sometimes get intimidated in some of these conversations and people pull back rather than, these things has to help us learn to grow together as citizens.
Captain, President also did call out to President on the other side of DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, and asking him for approvals for the UPDF to have continuous stay in the eastern side of Congo, purposefully to fight the ADF. Your comments on that?
Yes, it's a good idea, but it's also a very difficult idea, because guerrilla warfare never ends. It is something that has got a vein of money coming in. They're also protecting the minerals for some people. They're being used like askaris. Yeah. But at one point, I want us to become, as Ugandans, a little bit generous. When you talk about people like General Moses Ali, please let us be generous. Let's respect him. He has done a very good job. And let me tell you something. Having worked with him, he's one of the most honest people I've ever met. Therefore, I have a lot of respect for him, and very condolences to him. He just lost his wife. So, and by the way, could you mind if I say condolences to a gentleman who died, Mr. Sekajugo, who has been the medical man for FIFA and these international people. Okay. It's very unfortunate. When I say we should become generous, we should talk nicely about our people. Right. And even if they are bad, you become a different person. Let's respect them. And therefore, I am of the view that Tshisekedi and President Museveni should go to that last bit where President Museveni, please, ADF, come out of the bush. You are, whatever you are fighting for, let's try and find out what is it that you're fighting for. Let's find solutions to this conflict. And by the way, no country that doesn't have conflict. It is the management of that conflict that needs good leadership. So if you want to manage the conflict that's going on, we need good leadership to find out how to resolve this conflict. Okay. And conflict must be resolved, whether you like it or you don't. So what I'm saying, this, you can see how many years we've been in Somalia as a peacekeeping group. Yeah? How many years has it taken? Al-Shabaab has not gone away. Although we are not supposed to be fighting Al-Shabaab, the Somali group are fighting them, they are still there. Okay. And the Islamic nation, I just want to tell you something else. These people don't recruit only from this country. Please don't deceive yourself. ADF has got people from all over Eastern Africa. You've been getting this idea that they are here in Uganda because of our poverty. No, they're from Tanzania, they are from Mozambique, they are from Sudan and Somalia and so on and so forth. So, and the Islamic nation, which is in Syria, all right. They have even people from America.
My time being fast spent, yes. Allow me to give the last voice to Jacqueline, asking for solutions, especially towards what the President did, the two things that he mentioned, and also what it translates into in terms of relations with our White Alliance.
Well, I think from experience and from observing what has been happening in the last yes, it's very hard, much as the president doesn't want foreign influence in the country. I think it is very hard for him and for the country to detach from this foreign influence, because whatever we are doing is instigated by the whites. They influence all the policies that run the country. They decide how much you're going to, the budget allocations to health, to the military, to everything. So detaching the country from foreign influence is going to be very, very hard until that particular time when we can stand on our own and manage our affairs. But if we cannot do that, then detaching that foreign influence is going to be very hard. But also I know that the president our current President Museveni is the darling of the West, you know, and he's the big brother in the region, you know. So he really has allied with the Westerners, maybe to secure himself in power or for any other reason. So at this particular point, when he starts saying that he doesn't want that foreign influence, yet he's been collaborating and cooperating with them for a very long time. And actually, one of the reasons as to why Uganda has forces in Somalia was because of the Americans. I mean, it's the Americans that Jendai Fraser came and convinced the president in 2006 to deploy forces after all the UN had failed to deploy forces in Somalia. So if you have been the darling of the West for so many years, then you just can't wake up suddenly and begin saying that, no, I'm tired of foreign influence, you know. So that is how it is.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline, Joseph, as well as Captain Francis, for your inputs. And